Welcome to Coffee and Keys, where we blend our expertise and personal experiences to unlock your awareness of the real estate industry.
They're the best.
Here they are.
And now, here's your hosts, Darlene Kemp and Crystal Jacques.
And here we are.
And here we are. Part 2 of our Finding the Home podcast.
I know, because we went way over part 1.
Well, you know, anytime we get together and start talking, we could just talk for hours and talk for hours. So, yeah.
I know. And
That's
it's so great to be able to share what we know.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. That's what's fun about it. And hopefully we're giving some folks some insight and things to prepare and letting them know that it doesn't have to be that hard. And it's
not hard.
It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. Yeah. We got you.
All right, so let's spin into part 2, and maybe we'll keep it down this time. The time down.
Time frame, yeah. Well, at least watch the clock this time, so we don't have to do a part 2. We'll just go into a new section next time. How's that?
So where we were on part 2, at the end of part 1, is how do we find a home? I mean, there's so many avenues. It's unbelievable how many avenues they are. So yeah. I think go ahead.
That's one of the biggest things I think that's changed. I mean, 30 years ago, wow, if somebody wanted to go out and find a house, they literally had to come into the office because we didn't have internet, so we didn't have the computers. They relied on either yard signs or a real estate company, and they had to go in and say, what do you have listed out there? Now it's like houses are everywhere. So how do you tell people what's real and what's not, and how do they get into finding the house they want?
First of all, I wasn't even born 30 years ago, so...
Didn't we talk about how long you were married before?
Yeah, that's right. I've been married longer than that, right? But that's a good question. How do we find homes now? Because we have technology. You know, there's so many avenues to technology now. The first one is I have a portal. I have firsthand news, you know, as to what goes on the market. So what I can do, and this is probably the most common way an agent does it, is they put you in their Realtor portal based on your criteria. So if a house comes on the market, you know, that fits the buyer's criteria, it actually emails a copy out to the agent and the buyer. So I know a lot of buyers think that I'm sitting at my computer with my finger on the keys and I see one and I press the button. You know, that's further from the truth. It's automated. So that's the first way. And usually I keep my hands on it. I see one. I label those emails according to my buyer's name. So if I see one coming across for buyer ABC, and I know we're hot out there, you know, I look at it, and if I think it's a good fit, then I you know, reach out to the buyer, however, whatever ways of communication we have.
Yeah. And those polls that you're getting in, they're all filtered off of what that borrower said that they wanted or was that must in that property, right?
Right. So. Exactly. So yes, because there's no perfect house. So you know, by the time we make it to this point, I know what things they are willing to compromise. But if this is, you know, very, very close to what they want, you know, I reach out to them. Sometimes I'm out showing homes and they'll reach out to me. You know, but nonetheless, that's the first and probably common way to do it. Another way is if the buyer hears something at work or from a friend or a friend of a friend, hears about a home going on the market, you know, give me their information and I will call them and try to set it up. Be nice if we can get in the door before it goes on the market. It doesn't always happen that way, though. Yeah. So that's one way. I'm not above doing that, and I have sold homes that way.
Yeah, because the minute somebody thinks about buying a house, all of a sudden they're talking about it and they've got their ears open. So they'll hear other people say, hey, I've got this house, or somebody else is getting ready to sell. And so all of a sudden you'll hear those things. So you're just saying, filter it all back in and let's take a look at it. We just had a buyer like that. They wanted to buy their friend's townhome.
Didn't work out, but it was
But
good
at least
that
you
they
got
heard
to
it first.
like talk about it, and then they don't always work out, but it's really just that first step of, hey, here's something that's available in this market. If it's available, you got to move pretty quickly. So that's
You
why you have
do.
to have it all ready to go.
Oh my gosh, it's so competitive right now. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable how competitive it is. So that's a way to do it. Or buyers love Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin.
Yeah. So what's the difference of them seeing houses on those sites versus what you're sending them? What's kind of the difference between?
Good question. So in my Realtor portal, it's real time. As soon as that house goes on the market, it shoots out to whoever has that filter. In Realtor.com and Zillow and Redfin, platforms like that, they are not always real time. Some of them are under contract. So I'm not opposed to, a buyer sending me a house that they saw on, one of those platforms. Not opposed to that.
So in other words,
I
it
will
might
look
be
it up.
on your site for a couple of days before it ever hits Zillow or Redfin or some of those other ones, right? In other words, you might see it first before they ever do. And then you might have it under contract where it could be on one of the other sites for days or even weeks after they've already had a ratified contract on it. So you just don't know, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what you mean by real time. Take it on the market
they're not
and
always
off the
real
market.
time, but you never know what's going on with the contract. So they might have an offer and it's not going well. And then here comes me calling and they go, we are under contract. However, it's not going well.
Right. So then you might get a little insight.
Right.
So then you take them out and just show them. You arrange the showings, or
absolutely
for them.
I arrange the showings at that point, based on their schedule and my schedule. And I think we went through it on part one. I kind of time block according to my client's schedule. It's funny because no two people have the same schedule. So I'm able to time block or overlap, or, we'll touch base, the day before, and they're like, well, I don't want to go out tomorrow because my son has a baseball game or something like that. So then I kind of move another person into their slot. It's constant juggling. But I always get it done. No complaints.
That way you're available when the house, so that you can act quickly if it's something that your borrowers are interested in. And if they like it, then
we move forward. Okay. We move forward. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then another way that we can find a home is me, the agent, can write a letter. If my buyer wants a particular neighborhood, which we know the popular neighborhoods in Hampton Roads,
right?
Some of them, most people want them because of the schools. It's funny. I'll say, well, what are you looking for in a house? And they'll just name the school.
Right. Well, yeah. Everybody has something that is like the most important thing. And if you got kids and they really want a school district, I don't care. I just want one that's in that school district. Garage, no garage, whatever. It just has to be in that school district. Right?
It has to be in the school district.
And that price range, and that they're qualified for. And, so yeah, it definitely has to fit other criteria, but they have certain criteria that they like. And if there's nothing out there right now, but they know of a neighborhood that is in that price range, then you can possibly send out a letter to the neighborhood to see if anybody's thinking about it.
I've had success with that too.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I'm not above to doing that. So these are a few ways. I'm sure there's other ways out there, but these are the most common ways that I have worked to find a home. I'd like to know, though, what other way is there? Because I sure would try it.
And the market shifts and changes and things, happen all the time. So it's just a matter of keeping your eyes and ears open. And then, the minute that there is something out there that you think fits, that's when it's time to really be prepared. Make sure that they're prepared and ready to take that next step.
Exactly. Yeah. My mind is always turning. You know that because I call you at 11 at night, midnight.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, this just happened.
So those are the most common ways to find a home. But I guess we could kind of move on to what do we do when we find the home?
Right. So all of a sudden your buyer says, I really like this one. I could see us moving in here. I could see my furniture over here, my bed on there, and I could see us living here. What's next? That's when they get really nervous. What's next?
Yes.
So now what? Okay, I identify. I like this. I could see myself living here. Now what?
Yes, they do get really nervous because it's about to get real.
Yeah, and it is, especially in today's market, because you can't. If you take too much time to think about it, it may not be available for there. Yeah,
that's right.
In this market, so they
so
do
then
have to be
that's a
prepared
constant
to act. Yeah.
That's a constant juggle for the agent because you don't want to rush them, but if they love it,
you don't feel like
and
you're
that's always
pressuring
my
them or pushing them, right? You just want to make sure that they're making a well thought out decision in their choice. But at the same time, by not choosing or acting, they're technically making the choice anyway because it may not be available if they wait too long.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's where it comes in. It's really nice to have a partner, a transaction partner, which is you, because, we talk a lot. Yeah. But my first question to the buyer when they say, okay, I really like this. Now you have the buyers that like everything. That's a tough one. I've had to slow them down. Okay. So you like the last 4.
Yeah. You're going to write on all of them?
Yeah. Can you afford to buy all of them?
All of them?
So the first question actually is, how much do you like it? Do you love it or do you like it? If they say love, then that's probably the one that we're going to write on.
Right.
But if they say, I like it, then, I don't try to rush them, at that point. But if they love it and I'm making calls and I'm finding out there's offers on it, you're going to, I hate to tell you, but you're going to have to make a decision as to if we're going to proceed or not, if you use the word love.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If I love it, I'm seeing myself in it, then what's it going to take? What is it going to take for me to get in this house?
I just had a buyer recently that they were carrying a tape measure everywhere.
They're going to make sure their bed fits in that corner.
I'm like, well, while you have that out, can you measure my height? Because I think I'm shrinking. No. Anyway, no, that's so when we get to, we found the house.
Yeah.
What's the first thing that I do? Believe it or not, I call the listing agent and I ask a series of questions, and we can go into why it's important to ask these questions, because at this point, even if my buyer is not going to write an offer, I'm prepared if they are, because I know the questions that are going to come up.
Right. And that you can help them. A lot of times the buyers don't even know what questions to ask, right?
That's right. You can't ask a question if you don't know.
No. Yeah. I'm not sure what the next step is and what question I should even ask about. But at least you can find out as much as you can about that house, that seller, and that person, because if your buyers want to move forward on that property, the more you know, the better you can help negotiate a win-win for both your buyer and
it makes it easier to put the offer together.
Yeah, a winning offer together.
Yeah, a winning offer together.
Yeah, because nowadays you definitely get multiple offer situations where you could have 2, 3, 4, contracts. Then you want to stand out, and I think we talked about before that it's not always about the bottom line. It's not always about the money. It's about what the seller is looking for versus what your buyer's looking for, and just really trying to put it together so that they both feel like they got a win-win.
Right.
In negotiations. Yeah.
And I know buyers think that, it's all about the money. How much money can I offer that seller? But you're right. It's not always about the money. If we can get a well-rounded offer, addressing everything, in one way or another, because there's only so much money that the buyer's qualified for. I haven't had that infinite buyer yet.
Right.
you know?
Right. And then there's that number of this is what you're qualified for, but this is what you're comfortable for. And this is how much cash you have, whether it's down
Right.
payment, closing costs or whatever, so it's putting all these terms together to figure out how we can give that seller the best offer and yet still keep the buyer within their comfort zones.
That's right. So it's a balance. So the first question, I pick up the phone. Usually, if it's a question about the house directly, I'll call from the house. I'll call that listing agent from the house.
So if they ask you a question about how old hot water heater is or whatever that might be, then you can just call the agent. And that's,
I'm standing in the house
in
case that question leads to another question in the house.
Yeah.
I'm standing in the house. So that's usually the first question. If how old is the roof? I will call that listing agent from the house while we're standing there.
That's good. And if they answer, you'll get an answer.
And you'll get an answer.
If they know. Sometimes they won't know.
And then, they can come back and say, well, we have an overlay. What's an overlay?
Yeah.
On the roof. And so then I'll walk out with the buyer and say, okay, let's stand back and look at that roof, because I'm going to explain what an overlay is, So, that I think it's important if there's anything that pertains directly to the house to make that call from the house. Don't wait until we put in an offer, we win, we get to a home inspection, and then we're asking these questions. Let's know what we're walking into now.
Right. Better to negotiate it up front the best that you can. Absolutely.
That's right, because there are some things, you're right, Darlene, there are some things that you could put in the offer to address prior to closing, just be upfront about it. So the first question that I usually ask is, are there any offers on the house? And we know it's not always about the money, but sometimes it is. And the buyer only has so much money, right? But if there are no offers on the house, maybe the buyer has a little longer to think about, putting in the offer or as to if they want to put in the offer.
Yeah.
If there are offers on the house, then guess what? You're going to have to make a quick decision if you want to write an offer.
Right. Because timing, they can't, if they've got an offer, they're going to have to do something with it. Or let's say they're taking offers and today's Friday and they're, the seller's not going to be back in town until Sunday or something. At least, if you can get that information, then what you can do with that or how fast you have to act and how much time
have to act.
Yeah.
And it is nerve-wracking. So, if you have a little time, you might want to think about it a little longer. Ask more questions.
Yeah. So what are some other questions that you might ask the selling agent, not just about the house, but is it just about what's on the listing itself or outside of the listing, or what other things are you asking the seller or the seller's agent rather?
What time frame would they like to close? Would the seller like to close? If the buyer is flexible on the closing date, we probably want to get as close to the seller's time frame of closing. If we can.
Sellers don't want to have to move twice.
They don't want to have to move twice.
Yeah. So if you can kind of figure out who's flexible in their time to move, then that could create a win-win in there too, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
If the seller has to be out by a certain date and they have to be into another property, you want to make sure you can try and get it closed by that date. But let's say they're not packing out for 60 days and it's military and they're only going to come in on a certain date. So now you have to work with their seller's time frame.
Yeah. If we can.
Yeah.
What happens if the seller wants to move in 3 weeks, just per se?
Yeah.
And the buyer's in a lease for 3 months. Maybe the buyer can offer, address terms, another term in the contract. I wouldn't say don't put in an offer in that situation,
right.
But maybe there's another term, of the contract that you can address to make the seller maybe reconsider.
Right.
Maybe more money.
Yeah. Another month's
Yeah.
mortgage payment to make up the difference for
that's right.
the time frame of closing so there's some things that you can do to equal out the the negotiations. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I would say, try to address as much as you can. Are there any favorable terms and condition that the seller's looking for? Maybe seller does not want to move the heavy bookcase. I don't know. They want the buyer to, take the bookcase.
So leave the bookcase. Okay. My question is going to be, is it attached to the wall? Because if it is attached, the bookcase is attached and it's real property, and the intent is it was attached to be permanent, right? It's a built-in bookcase. So
Right.
it's part of the real estate. It typically would convey anyway. But if you've got a $1,500 or $15,000 bookcase behind you and you're trying to negotiate the furniture in with the contract, the lender may have an issue because you can't finance in personal property. You can only finance in real property. And again, real property is the property that was made with the intent to be permanent, to be sold with a house from time to time, but you can't finance in personal property. So you would have to say bookcase to convey at no value so that the appraiser doesn't give it any value. Otherwise, we have to subtract it from the value of the purchase price.
Wow. So what I usually do is I put it on a separate contract addendum with those words.
Yeah, because that's real property, not real estate. So now you can
Right.
say, okay, this is kind of convey on a personal property addendum or something. Yeah.
Right. So we don't put it in put it in the
Yeah,
contract.
because we do have to address it, and again, if there are enticements, to the buyer, then they could have consequences in the loan program as well, right? So we are
Right.
going to look at those. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess another question that I ask is there anything about the property that we should be aware of? And the reason why I ask that is because agents are supposed to disclose what they know. So if they know that there's something going on with the house, that could affect, if the buyer would like to put in an offer or not on that house.
Yeah, my septic doesn't work.
The septic.
Run. No.
I know. That's true. That's true. Or the septic is too small because the septic is measured by the bedrooms, correct?
By the bedrooms, yep.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So if you got 4 bedrooms, but your septic is designed for 2, you got a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that's why it's important to ask. Put the agent on the spot. Is there anything about this house that we need to know?
Yeah. Is the roof leaking?
Is the roof leaking?
Yeah.
Do you have termites?
Yeah, termites. That's a big one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, sometimes you're going to have inspections and stuff in there anyway, even if they say, yeah, the well is just fine. Everything's working good. But, depending on the loan program, we need to get the water tested, right?
Yes.
So those are all the things that we kind of look at and just having a heads up. And what do you know about the property that you can share? Right.
And I'm not saying that the agents know everything because I've been put in that position that the seller didn't tell me something, but I'd like to know if they do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you don't ask, then you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the beginning steps. I mean, just having those answers at this point makes for, if the buyer would like to put in an offer, it makes it much easier to put together the offer.
Right.
But once I get these answers, then the discussion is, would you like to put in an offer on the house? And if they say, let's say they say, yes, I do. I love it. I love that house. Then guess who the next person is that they need to talk to?
They probably need to make a phone call to me because at that, I always have, in that pre-qualification stage, I say, as you're out there looking at homes, if you find one you really like, then send me that listing. And as you're getting ready to make that offer, we can do some side-by-side scenarios so that you really know what you're getting into. We're going to look at that property, that specific sales price. Is it a condo? Is there condo fees? Is there homeowners association fees? We're going to look at what rates have done since the pre-qualification versus today. So, because if you get the ratified contract, we can lock you in and you know exactly what your rate's going to be at that time, right?
So wait, back up. What's a lock-in?
when again, we said interest rates kind of change a little bit every day for the market. So once the buyer has identified a property and they have a closing date and a time frame, we can set and lock in that interest rate based on that day's pricing.
On that day,
So
it won't
that
change.
way they don't have to worry. Right. You don't want to like ratify a contract today and you're thinking your interest rate and your payment is this, and then you're not really going to know. And the market can change quickly, right? So I always tell people, if you like it, lock it, and then just don't look back. So you know what you're going to get when you go to ratify that contract. Again, they don't have to lock in per se until right before closing. But, I always say that, especially if you're closing in a tight window, let's take a look at the market. If you lock it in, you know what you got. Right. And then I can run scenarios based on, hey, this is the list priced, and Crystal may run some numbers to find out, maybe a little overpriced, maybe a little underpriced. She can kind of help guide you that way. But then I can give you some side-by-side scenarios. Here's one at 400,000. Here's one at 425. Here's one at 450, just in case you need to go up a little bit. And oh, by the way, this is the type of loan program that you're getting. But what if you have to guarantee a little bit over appraised value? This is what that's going to look like. And this is what this is going to mean for you. Because, people usually have, two numbers that they're really concerned about. Number one is, what's my monthly payment? How much am I going to pay for this a month?
That's the biggest question.
That's the biggest question normally, because that's in their comfort zone. So what's my monthly payment? In other words, I need to know the real estate taxes. We're still kind of guessing on homeowners insurance, but if I know the real estate taxes, I know the sales price, I know what the interest rate is going to be, we got an idea on which loan program, we can kind of really hone in on what that payment is going to be and make sure that they're comfortable with that so that they can move forward. And then the next big question is, how much money do I need to make this happen now? Right? How much money am I going to need at closing? And there may be some things that are optional. Yeah, well, I've got this much money, but I really, it looks like they might need some work done on that bedroom. I love the house, but I could use some new carpet in that, couple of things. So they want to hold back a little money. So we can run some side-by-side scenarios and just kind of see, what that means. And in this market, if you call that listing agent and she's got 3 other offers on the table and they're, you might have to go above the list price, and you might have to guarantee, what we call it, an appraisal gap guarantee or whatever. But I have to make sure and verify that this borrower has the cash in the event that the appraisal does come in low. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But at least I can run them a side-by-side scenario so that when the next time they talk to you, they say, okay, this is where we think the list price is versus our offer price versus appraisal guarantee. This is how much my payment would be, and this is how much cash out of pocket. I'm comfortable with any one of these options, and it really helps them go in there to negotiate. And a lot of people just don't know what that is. I mean, typical rule of thumb, depending on the interest rate, at a 6% interest rate, your payment difference is going to be $6 for every $1,000. Are you really going to negotiate, $1,000 in a contract to save $6?
Right.
So $10,000 could make $60 difference in the payment. I mean, just kind
That's
of depending on where they're
at. That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should memorize that.
Yeah. We have an interest rate factor chart that'll tell you exactly what it is per 1,000. So we can run into that on one of these other podcasts for sure.
There you go.
Look at the numbers. But I can always kind of give a rule of thumb so that as you're out there negotiating, the buyers aren't speculating or guessing. And you put that, when they have to, when they're not sure, then they procrastinate. And then they don't take that next step, and then they could lose out on the property because they waited too long. So we try to answer all those questions so that they can make an educated choice and an educated decision. So they know, this is how much I need out of pocket. This is what my payments are going to be. These are my options. Now you can really go in and have the next conversation with them, with you, once you found out all your questions, so that now the ball's in their court. Do you love this home, and how bad do you want it, and what are you willing to do?
We're going in.
Going in. Next step.
So it's probably a good place to stop before we're doing a part 3.
Yeah. So it's really just
425.
But I love the part, they're pre-qualified. They know what they can do, right? So we went through pre-qualification. Then you went through the process of, this is how we're going to find the perfect home.
Right.
For them, for this moment in time, right?
Right.
It may not be perfect in every way, but it's perfect for them at the time. So they're ready to write an offer. And so we're going to talk about, really getting to know those numbers and really honing in so that the next step is going to be, ratifying that contract, but you have to write that offer.
We
in order
have to write
that
the
ratified
offer.
contract. So that in itself, I think, can be a huge successful podcast that will really give some insights to a buyer and kind of help. Again, it alleviates the fear. Most
Right.
people are like, I'm not writing an offer. I don't even know what that means. So we can kind of dive into, again,
It's a
all the
lot to
vocabulary.
read.
It's a lot. It's a lot to read. It's a lot of vocabulary. It's a lot of disclosures. It's a lot of what does this really mean? And, and again, when they don't understand the process or the terms, then that's going to cause a hesitation, as it should, right? And then they could miss out. So if we can give them a little bit of heads up on what goes into that next step, then they're going to be prepared when they're ready to make that step, and it won't be so scary for them to do that.
Yeah,
it really can
I
be
think
exciting and fun.
I think between discussing, the questions or the answers to the questions that they have and talking to you about the numbers, you're right. I think at that point the fear kind of comes down a little because now we're all speaking the same language.
Right. And what is it saying? Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah. Knowledge is power.
It puts the power in their court, and they know what their options are. And that's really the biggest thing. You're not out there saying, hey, you need to write an offer on this house, and here's the price that you need to put it in for. And here, this really is their choice.
It is.
Now, what you are the pro at, Crystal, is knowing how to negotiate those contracts to win. So you know your market, you know what the market is doing. So you can advise them based on what they've seen and what they've done, right? So that you can help them get that winning bid. And that's what's really, really important, that they get, understand what this process is, so that you can help guide them, that if they really love this home, you have an idea on what it could take.
Yeah, I have some good stories about, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but I've had some good stories about buyers that didn't have the money.
Yeah.
Just recently, we stood in a line, and I'll tell this story really quick, but we got to the condo. We're standing in a line. You would have thought somebody was handing out $100 bills out there because there was a big mob.
Wow.
In front of this. And I couldn't believe that we were going to go in this house. And this particular buyer did not have closing costs, so I should have taken the cue when I called the agent to get a time to show the house, and she gave me 5:08 p.m. I should have taken
5:08. Okay. You have 2 minutes to go through this house.
That's
so
right.
that the next one will come in.
So we get there. I'm like looking at him, and I said, please don't light this house. I mean, there were people coming out of the house, running to their car. And this was just recently. This was last year, like late last year, running to their car. The agent gets out a laptop, puts it on the hood of the car, and starts typing. Oh, wow. And I looked at my buyer. I said, please don't light this house. Right then. And we went in 5:08. My elbows came out because I'm going through the crowd. We go in, and he looked at me and he said the L word. I love this house. And I was
went, oh my God, that means
I was like, he needs closing costs. But we did. I tried to call the agent, and I kind of flew blind on this one. She was so busy. I think they had over 30 offers, if I'm not mistaken, on that house. She was so busy on the phone. She said, I can't answer your questions. And so I said to him, because we wrote an offer, I said to him, well, let's just do the best we can. I think you should come out as high as you can, because we're going to ask for closing costs. Just in every aspect, do the best that you can. And he did, and we won. Right. I could not believe it. I could not believe it. And he's living in that house today. And
I always say, it never hurts to ask. So just because, some people get intimidated. Well, there's so many people in there, everybody else is going to write out,
somebody has to win.
The offer. Yeah. If anything else, number one, it gets you comfortable to making good offers. If you love the house, the word love comes out. Again, I don't want you to make offers on something you're really not interested in, but it gets you through that process. You start to understand, okay, this is what goes into the contract. This is what goes into the process. And so, it never hurts to ask. Go in with the best that you can. And if that one doesn't make it, then you know what to do next time, right? And
That's
it's not going to be
right.
as foreign and strange. And so, yeah, and then when you win, you're going, see, if you didn't ask, you wouldn't have gotten it. But you did, and you got the closing costs. And even though not a lot of people are buying it, sometimes they like the program, they like the terms, they like other things. It's not just about the money. Sometimes it's about the whole offer in itself. Right?
Well, I asked her because the first thing she said is, well, you weren't the best financially. That was the first thing she said. Okay. I said, so what won it for us? And she said it was the terms. The terms were solid. It's exactly, she goes, I know I didn't talk to you, but it was exactly what my buyer was looking for, or my seller was looking for.
Right. So you put the buyer together and the seller together and they like the same terms and it's solid. Yeah. Strong.
It's a solid
buyers.
contract.
Yeah.
And she said, we're going with you.
Makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean, I think he cried, if I'm not mistaken, because he really
probably
loved
didn't
that
think
house.
he was going, and he didn't think he was going to get it because he saw all the other people in there. He knew that, sellers weren't normally paying closing costs at that time, but you did what was right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he couldn't
never
believe
hurts
it.
to
I
ask.
couldn't believe it. Because I was kind of mad at her because she didn't call me back right away to let me know if we won or not. So when she did call,
wondering.
I kind of answered the phone like, oh, so you decided to call me.
Yeah. And then
she
she
said,
gave you
I
good
did
news.
just to let you know that you won. And I go, we won? She said, you won. So it was a really, that's a happy story because he loved that. He could not sleep. He was calling me at 1 a.m., texting me. Have you heard anything? I go, everybody's asleep except for you and me.
Yeah. Some people are like, oh, I'm not making an offer. I don't want to get in a bidding war. I'm like, well, make your best offer because if you
never
don't,
know.
then the answer is no, and you just don't know. And then if you don't get it, every time that has happened, they found something that they go, oh, this one I think I actually like just a little bit better. Yeah. So it works. It's funny how that always seems to happen. But yeah, that does happen. You'll find another one out there. So yeah. So the key is just, make that next step. Take that next action. That's how you get to the next phase. So
that is true.
So, yeah. So next podcast, we'll actually be talking about that contract a little more in detail and little vocabulary in there, but we'll try to make it fun. We'll try to tell some stories.
Of course. I love my job.
I love my job. Yep. And really is just getting people to understand it doesn't have to be big and scary. And it's the biggest financial decision you're going to make. I get that. But we can break it down and the choice is yours. And if you love this house,
I always say, leave it to the professionals. That's what we do. We deal with this all the time. Don't try not to stress about it because that's our job.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just going to guide you through and take you to the next step. And
that's right.
And that you're prepared. And again, we're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to tell you what your choices are. And then you get to make the choice that's best for you.
They get to make the decision. That's a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So that's what we do. But I look forward to the next podcast. And I'm so excited we're doing these.
I know. I love it. We've had some really good reception from people. Really
I'm
good.
excited.
Yes.
So if anybody loves the podcast, make sure you like, share, tell everybody else about it. Listen, give us some feedback. We love it.
What are we on Facebook? We're on Instagram. Yeah. We had phenomenal amount of showings. Grant was so excited.
For the YouTube. Yeah,
on the YouTube, people are watching it. Yes.
So exciting.
Some people have reached out to me on Facebook.
Yeah. So we're enjoying it. Well, hopefully somebody's getting something out of it. And that's really the main reason that we do it is just try to, we believe in what we do and we just want to make it a little simpler and break it down a little bit for anybody else who wants to buy or sell a house or finance whatever that might be. So we're here. If you guys need us, just give us a call.
Coffee and Keys is brought to you by Darlene Kemp, VP, Senior Loan Officer, NMLS ID 173897. Atlantic Coast Mortgage, LLC is an equal housing lender. NMLS ID 643114. www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. And Crystal Jacques, Realtor for both RE/MAX Allegiance, 4000 Virginia Beach Boulevard, Suite 164, Virginia Beach, Virginia 23452. Office phone 757-490-7400. 7300 and RE/MAX Professionals, 20241 North 67th Avenue, Suite A1 Glendale, Arizona 85308. Office phone 623-362-3000. Each office is independently owned and operated and supports the Fair Housing Act and Equal Opportunity Housing.